my pledge is to come out of the EU at Halloween, on the 31st of October.
The current Brexit deal is dead, says Boris Johnson. The only way to get a better one is to put a hard Brexit back on the table.
And the way to get our friends and partners to understand how serious we are is finally, I'm afraid, to abandon the defeatism and to prepare confidently and seriously for a WTO or no deal outcome.
He wants to work with Europe on a new plan and said he's willing to use the agreed €42 billion divorce deal as leverage. He also waved away Brexit's biggest sticking point, the Irish border backstop, saying nobody wants a hard border in Northern Ireland.
There are abundant technical fixes that can be introduced to make sure that you don't have to have checks at the border.
And some very harsh words overnight from the Iranian president. He said that the White House is afflicted by mental retardation. He also called these new sanctions against Iran's supreme leader and Iran's foreign minister outrageous and idiotic. Quote, "You prove to the world yourselves that you are unreliable and break any agreement and that you do not stick to your signatures. How do you expect us to negotiate with you all over again?" Rouhani referring there to the Iran nuclear deal, which President Trump, of course, pulled out of. President Trump, for his part, in the past has said that he's open to cutting a new deal with Iran. But overnight, again, a spokesman for Iran's foreign minister said that what these new sanctions do is permanently close the door to diplomacy with the United States, Sandra. And then we also have this response from the administration this morning, which is coming from National Security Advisor John Bolton, who is in Jerusalem. And while he did not directly respond to some of the more choice words that Rouhani directed at the administration, Bolton did say that he believes the new U.S. sanctions and other pressure will eventually bring Iran to the negotiating table.
We're only days away from U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to Seoul, and while the details of his visit are still under wraps, a U.S. official says Trump will be meeting President Moon Jae-in here, but not North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Our Lee Ji-won has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump has no plans to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during his two-day visit to South Korea starting this Saturday. Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency reported that a senior U.S. administration official said this to reporters in a phone call on Monday. He reportedly added that President Trump will be in Seoul to see President Moon Jae-in, and that there is a lot to cover on their alliance and North Korea during their 2 days together. The two leaders will be comparing notes on the current situation with Pyongyang and discussing their bilateral trade agreement, which had been altered earlier this year. When asked if Chinese President Xi Jinping's recent summit with the North Korean leader pressures President Trump, the official mentioned Trump's announcement that he had received a birthday card from Kim Jong-un and said that the door to diplomacy is still open.
Now, 3 Chinese banks have been found in contempt for refusing to comply with subpoenas in a probe into North Korean sanctions violations. It means, for the very first time, one of China's largest banks could be prohibited from accessing the U.S. financial system. This is according to the Washington Post on Monday. While not identified, the Daily concluded, based on court rulings, that the banks were China's state-owned Bank of Communications, China Merchants Bank, and Shanghai Pudong Development Bank. The report said the situation is most precarious for the latter of the 3. All of them are accused of laundering over $100 million for the North state-run Foreign Trade Bank, which is under international sanctions.
I'm outraged and I'm frustrated, more than words can explain, at the blatant slap in the face that all South Africans were recently dealt when the ANC announced its proposed chairpeople of our parliamentary committees. I took it as a personal left hook to my jaw when I read with utter disbelief that the very man who was accused of offering a blank cheque to Advocate Venara, the evidence leader in the Public Enterprises Inquiry into state capture at Eskom, will be rewarded with a chairperson seat. An ex-minister who has been repeatedly accused of interfering with the South African mining industry for the enrichment of the Gupta family will be rewarded with a chairperson seat. The woman who destroyed what was left of the SABC will be rewarded with a chairperson seat. The woman whom, without explanation, sold off the entire South African strategic fuel reserve will be rewarded with a chairperson seat. An ex-mayor of Buffalo City who was found guilty for 9 counts of fraud will be rewarded with a chairperson seat.
The search now for a missing college student in Utah, Mackenzie Lewick, was last seen more than a week ago taking a lift from the airport to a park where she was met by someone in a car. ABC's Clayton Sandell has the story.
This morning, it's the big question. Who is the mystery person Mackenzie Lewick met in the middle of the night just before she vanished?
You're just thinking about the worst 24/7.
The 23-year-old University of Utah senior returned from a family funeral June 17th, flying from LA to Salt Lake City, landing late 1:35 a.m., texting her mother at 2:01, then catching a Lyft ride to a park, arriving there at 2:59 a.m.
Mackenzie was met at Hatch Park by an individual in a vehicle. The Lyft driver left Mackenzie at the park with that person and stated that Mackenzie did not appear to be in any type of distress.
But from there, Lewick drops off the grid. Friends and family say no sign of her. Her phone switched off. She misses a midterm exam and a flight to LA on Sunday.
Children taking care of children. This is how conditions were described inside this detention center in Clint, Texas. Over 300 migrant children, some as young as 2 years old, were being held in this remote border patrol station. A team of lawyers inspecting the facility say the children were covered in filth, sleeping in cold concrete floors with barely enough food and water to go around.
We are seeing sick children, we are seeing dirty children, we are seeing hungry children, we're seeing children who have been separated from their parents and other family members, children who within the facility are being separated from their siblings, which they need to be with their siblings right now. We are seeing dirty clothes on them, many of them have not been bathed, many of them talk about how hungry they are.
The children were hidden behind this barbed wire fence, some locked away for 3 weeks with limited medical attention. Up to 25 were sick with the flu. In one case, 3 girls, all under age 15, said guards made them look after a sick toddler.
It's been 61 years since a tram was last seen running along George Street. Now Sydney's new light rail is bringing a bit of history back to the city after a rough ride of delays and cost blowouts.
It's a sight some thought may never happen, and maybe a sign that this light rail project has finally turned a corner.
What a relief after, obviously the construction that we have seen. But to now run it to Town Hall is just great news for everyone, and it's a big sign of, that we're not far off now.
Last night, for the first time since the late 1950s, a tram travelled from Randwick, past Central, through Haymarket and onto George Street. But Town Hall was not the final stop. In another first, the tram continued through to the new world-class maintenance depot built on the old Rozelle rail yards, a one-stop shop we've not had before.
Previously, we had to take the wheel sets off and send them across the other side of Sydney to have them turned there, but we can do it here now, on site.